G'day, welcome. My name's Andrew from GP3D, and in today's video I'm going to show how I use Blender for 3D printing. So if you are wanting to do that sort of thing, a bit unsure about it, this video might help you. So I'm going to try and make it like a beginner's guide, how to use a few features of Blender for the specific purpose of creating objects, designs for your components that can then be 3D printed. So Blender is the tool that I use. I probably use about 0.5%. It's such a tiny portion of Blender's capability, and I can show you what I do. I'm definitely no expert by any means. I know a few specific features of Blender that let me do what I want to achieve in terms of creating my designs and components for 3D printing. There's always multiple ways of getting to an end goal, achieving what you want to achieve, and I can show you my version of that or my ways of achieving that. I'm not saying it's the only way. There's definitely probably much better ways to do it. There might be worse ways to do it, hopefully. But this works for me. So I've been doing this for a number of years now, and it's like a way to do things which is simple and also flexible. So it allows me to sort of quickly create my designs, but specifically or importantly, it allows me to then edit and modify things quickly. So I'm going to show you right from the start. I'm going to show you a bit about just a quick reference to download and set up or install Blender, and then the steps that I go through to configure the environment, and also some of my methods of creating an object. So I've got like a small component here that I'm going to replicate in 3D. So CAD design of this object. It's a little shock tower brace from a vintage Pro 10 car. So I'm going to use this as a little method or demonstration object to show you how I can replicate an existing object. So I guess there's two key approaches. One is if you're trying to create something out of your mind, then you just go in and start creating things and manipulating the designs and trying to get what's inside your mind out onto the CAD program into a 3D model. And then the other way is if you've got something existing or something similar to what you wanted to create, you can start with a physical object and measure it. So very important tool is a pair of calipers or verniers, whatever you call them. So that's all I use pretty much, which is main tool, and then the object that you're trying to replicate into the model. So I'll show you a quick reference to start with. So I'll try and make this very beginner's guide. So if you're unsure where to start, like what do I do? Oh, I want to 3D print something. It's very daunting to start with, and there's so many options available that it can be very confusing. And even if you do sort of get part way into it, there might be some key aspects that are a bit tricky or hard to sort of comprehend or get your head around. Often with these things, once you've done it once or once you've sort of seen it done and show you a few key aspects of how to achieve your goal, then it can become pretty easy. But it's always that initial, where do I start? What tools should I use? You open up a bit of software and it looks like very daunting. There's a 1,000 different settings, and how do you actually get something basic to work to achieve your goal? So let's start at the start, and we'll sort of look at the software I'm going to use for this purpose, which is Blender, and we'll go step by step through all of the basic settings through to actually designing the object, and how to sort of export and import through the slicer process, and then set up for an actual print. So I'll make a few assumptions that you might have a printer or you want to buy one. You may or may not be familiar with the slicer software, so I'll show the basics of it, but not full tutorial guides into some of those aspects. We can do that another day, maybe another video. But obviously, there's many videos out there on the internet to get you started with many of those aspects in terms of whatever printer you've got, how to use the basics of the slicer, etc. So I'll show you what I do, and then we can always do more videos in the future to delve into various aspects in detail. And of course, if you want to ask questions or comments below, we can try and answer a few questions there. And also, as part of GP3D, I've got my membership program. So if you'd like to join up, you can go to my website, grandprix3d.com. It's a web store, and in there there's a membership you can join. So $20, 20 Australian bucks, whatever that works out in your currency, to join up, and then $3 Australian a month to be your subscription. So very cheap, just a very small token amount. And as part of that, you get a big discount off my physical products in the store. So store-wide, you get a percentage discount. You get all of my digital files for free once you're a member. And you also get access to our private Discord server. So there's a dedicated GP3 Discord server where you can jump on and join as a member, and you'll get access to all of our discussions and chats and resources, and any questions, specific questions or general questions in there you can also ask, and myself or our community will to help you get sorted and resolve your issues or questions, answer them, and get you moving and having fun with a bit of 3D printing. RC, obviously my focus is all RC models, but the general process of designing and printing can be applied to so many different aspects of the hobbies, including RC. So, having said that, we'll get stuck in. So first thing is you will need to download Blender. So you can go to blender.org and you can download the version that you want. I've actually got version 4.4 installed. So the current looks like it's version 5. So you can download the latest version. What you see in this video will be version 4.4, but obviously most of it will be very similar. There might be a few minor differences if you have a different version. So yeah, so pick your version. So obviously the latest is 5. You can download that. Download Blender. You can make a donation to the Blender organization because Blender is fully open source. It's free to download. I usually download a few dollars occasionally when I feel like it's due, because I use it heavily. It's a fantastic program, and I think that we need to support the community, whatever way we can. So yeah, I often donate the the €5, whatever that works out in Australian dollars or your currency, and then keep it going because it's an unbelievable program. And as I said, I'm using a tiny portion of it. So once it's downloaded, you'll get your download file into your download folder. So it'll be probably a RAR zipped file, and then you go through the normal process to double click on it, go through the setup wizard, install wizard, and get it installed. And then once you have it installed, I'll jump over now to my installation, which is here. So you open up, launch Blender for the first time, and this is pretty much what your viewport is going to look like. So initially you might look at this and go, oh my god, where do I start? What do I do? So hopefully this video will help you in some of those questions of the initial stages of getting started. And something that's quite daunting to start with will then become quite straightforward and familiar and simple once you get a bit of understanding and practice with it. So this is the scene. So you've got like your layout modeling scenes. I usually click over to the modeling view, and you'll see here there's a couple of objects to the default. So what I'm going to do is I will go through how I set up my environment. There's a few settings which make it more convenient for modeling, especially for the purpose of 3D printing. So initially, I'll show you a few of the menus, shortcut settings as we go. So the first one here is edit mode. So up the top here, you've got edit mode and object mode. So for this video, we'll just show object mode and edit mode, and we'll get to what the difference is between those. So the sort of standard object mode is good for just viewing all your objects. If you press your mouse wheel button down and move the mouse around, you can sort of move around your view. So you can see here I'm sort of moving around it, and then as soon as you let go of your mouse wheel button, it'll stop. You can scroll the mouse, so to zoom in, zoom out. That gives you a scrolling view. So to start with, we will get rid of these objects. So you can see I've got 3 objects here. There's a basic cube object. Over here we've got a camera object. For this we won't be using any cameras, but that's for recording animations, which is not really our world of 3D printing. And this little object here is a light. So again, for lighting up your model, for taking screenshots and doing video and animations. Again, we won't be using that for this purpose. So we'll hit the delete button to delete that. Select the cube again, delete that, and select the camera and delete that. So get rid of all the objects. You see the red line here we've got is the x-axis. The green line is the y-axis. And there's also the vertical is Z, which I haven't got displayed. We've got a grid here on the floor. And we've got some shortcuts that give you different orientations. I'll show you that shortly when we have an object to make it a bit more obvious. Okay, so we've got our viewport here. We've got our properties menus across to the side here. There's a little small arrow which will give us our tool drop downs. You can click on that left arrow to expand out the tools. Also the N key, so N for Nelly. N key is a shortcut to hide show, so I'm just pressing the N key. It'll toggle that to display or hide it. I find I usually have it displayed, and we'll see some more menus here soon when we finish configuring the environment as to why it's useful to see it all. The next step is to set the measurement. So over on the side here in the properties panel, we've got this little icon that has a cone and a sort of sphere icon. So I'll click on that. So there's a number of different sort of properties groupings here. So we'll start with this scene properties, and we'll go down to units. So I like to work in millimeters. So we want to change the length from meters to millimeters. So most of the components that we're designing are quite small, especially for RC or for any sort of modeling type purpose. And millimeters is a good measurement. If you want to work in other measurements, you can select them there, but for this purpose, millimeters is most ideal for a good size. Unit system is metric. Of course, if you want to work in imperial, then you change that to imperial and select your other measurements accordingly. And then the unit scale here is key. So at the moment we're 1. So we want to change this. 1 basically means it's in meters for a blender. So we want to change this to 0.001. So I'll type 0.001 there. So that converts meters to millimeters effectively. Even though we've selected the length as millimeters, we need to specify it in the unit scale as well. For this purpose, I don't really change any of the others. Mass in kilograms we're not really using, and time we're not using, and temperature we're not using. So they're the key settings to change there. And also for the unit scale, we go up to our viewport overlays. So the viewport overlays, like this area that we can see our model as the viewport, and some of the settings are under this double sort of circle icon. So I'll click on the drop-down arrow. There's a whole bunch of options here which can hide or show various aspects of the view. So one thing we want to do is change this scale also to 0.001. So again, that gives us millimeters on the floor. We want to show the floor. I'm showing the XY axis, so if I click Z, you'll see the blue Z axis. I usually don't show that, don't find a need for it. The origins, I will show you if you click on an object like the cube, there'll be a little orange dot with the origin. So it's good to show those because you can see where the origin of each object is. And also the 3D cursor. So the 3D cursor is this red and white circle, and that sort of shows where the, like a three-dimensional cursor is, as it's called. So think of the equivalent of a word editor, a text editor where you have a cursor where your text is going to type from. So it's a similar concept in the 3D world. Okay, so now we've set our scale details. And we've deleted our default objects. The color I change as well. So for that, we're going to go into the preferences. So if I go up to the menu, edit, and then preferences, this is going to show me a preferences menu with a whole bunch of different categories down the left-hand side here. And then for each of those, there's a whole range of settings for them. So firstly, the background color, as you can see, it's quite dark. It's up to you, of course, to select whatever sort of colors you want, and you can change almost every color imaginable in this whole environment. I usually leave pretty much everything default, but I do like to change the color so it gives me a good contrast in the wireframe mode, which you'll see later. And it's always confuses me where to find the settings. So so we go in the preferences here, we need to go to themes, and then we go to the 3D viewport. So that's our view that we're seeing at the moment, 3D viewport. And we can see here we've got a lot of different settings. So I've never messed with any of these. Go nuts if you want to. So what we need to do is go down, go down to the theme space, and that's this one here, theme space. So we'll open that up, and then we scroll further down. We get to the subsection gradient colors. So open up gradient colors. So here we go, background type, single color. You can make it gradients or whatever, but I like single color. And this gradient high/off is the actual sort of main background color as you see it. So I always like to lighten this up. So you can see as I move this slider on the grey-white scale, I get like a nice color. I don't want it too bright because it's intense on the eyes, but about there somewhere looks kind of good. So you can set that as you like. Maybe a little bit lighter. There you go. That's pretty good. Cool. So that's the color. Another setting that I like to do is the way that the environment zooms. So if I'll just close this for a sec and I'll add an object. So I'll get back to how to do this, but let's add a object that is 10 millimeters. Cool. So if the object's over here, if I zoom, so even if I put my mouse over the object and I zoom, it's kind of, I'm not zooming to the object, I'm just kind of zooming to the center of the screen. So if I go back to my preferences and I set, go up to the navigation. So where's navigation is here, and go to the zoom section, and this zoom to mouse position. So I'm going to check this, and now if I have my object off to the side, but I have my mouse over it, and I zoom, see how I'm keeping the object into the viewport. It's not disappearing off the side. So that's always handy if you want to sort of zoom into your model, especially as it gets more complex, and keep it on the screen. So that's always a handy one. Okay, so another one is in system. So in system, in the cycles render devices, I like to use the optics renderer, and I'm going to select my video card. So if you've got a kick-ass video card, you can select that here. So it's going to use the GPU of the video card to do a lot of the graphics intensive processing. So you're not going to put that processing load onto your CPU of your computer. You can tell the video card to do it. And obviously if you've got a good video card, you want that to do the processing because it's going to be far more efficient, more powerful than the graphics capabilities of your CPU. So you can see here I've got the GeForce GTX card, and so I'm ticking this, and I'm going to tell it I want to use that as my rendering device. Okay, so we're almost there for the configuration. The last aspect is the extensions or add-ons. So one of the really powerful aspects of Blender is that you can install a whole range of different add-ons that give you different capabilities, different functionality. So depending on what type of designing, what type of purpose you're doing, there's plenty of extra add-ons and plugins you can use or you can access and use to give you the features and functionality that you want. So if I click on Get Extensions or add-ons, you can... oh, it looks like... Okay, so when you first... a fresh install, you need to tell it to allow online access. So this lets you install the add-ons from the Blender server. There'll be heaps of third-party add-ons as well that you can search, download, install if you research them. Once you've downloaded them, then you can open them and install them here locally as well. So I'll just go through a few of the key add-ons that are utilized for this. The first is the 3D print toolbox. So this is this takes you to the website. This is a very important add-ons. Oh yes, so cool. So sorry, let's go to the add-ons section, and we can see here we've got a whole range of extensions that we can, or some of them are activated by default from the default install, but there's a whole bunch of other ones that we can activate or install. So yeah, the 3D print toolbox, that's very important because once we've created the model, we want to be able to export it into an STL format. So there was STL, stereolithical telegraph something. I don't know what the acronym is again. I have to look at it every time, but STL is the 3D printing format for your design file. So we need to export it from Blender as an STL, and this extension lets us do that. So we'll tick that one. Another, won't go into it today probably, but another really useful one I find is the bolt factory. So that lets you create, all the different types of nuts and bolts that you want to incorporate into your, design environment potentially to work out lengths of screws and sizes. And also it's not so much useful for the actual component and your print, but it is pretty cool if you want to do some renders and images of your design. Boolean tool. So we'll get into the Boolean modifiers, but the bool tool is very useful because that's how I do most of my designing. There's destructive and non-destructive modeling technique, and what I'll be showing you today is the mostly non-destructive technique. It's usually a bit of a mix, but predominantly non-destructive with a small portion of destructive, and I'll show you briefly what that means. Okay, edit mesh tools is a useful one for manipulating the mesh, so it gives you some more advanced tools for the future. Same also with loop tools, so we'll tick loop tools as well. Cool, okay, so let's close the Blender preferences. And now we've got an environment that is ready to use. So this will be the basics of how you want to start doing each of your designs. And in this file that I've got open here, so it's unsaved at the moment, I've just opened up a new Blender file as you would from a fresh install. And I've done all those configuration settings, and the good news is you don't have to do those every single time. So what we want to do is save them. So very important. So then every time you open another Blender file, you'll get this as your default view or default environment. So you go to File, go to File, and then we go down here to Defaults, and we want to Save Startup File. So we want to overwrite the current startup file with all of our settings we've just done. So click Overwrite, and now that's all saved. So if you mess it up and you want to go back to the factory settings, you can do load factory settings at any point in the future. that'll be local to the file as well. So if you just want to open a fresh Blender file again and see the default factory settings, you can. And that'll only be saved once you do another save startup file. If you're happy with a certain configuration and setup, you can overwrite your previous startup with your current configuration. So very important, save startup file. Cool. Okay, so that's the first part of this video where we're installed Blender and configured the environment for our purpose. And now we want to create a model of something. So I'm going to use this hopefully reasonably simple little shape. Something I found when you look at a shape, if you are trying to replicate something, look at it and go, right, what are the sort of key shapes I've got here? So I've got sort of curved section, which is basically a cylinder, which is sort of stretched out maybe. I've got box sections, which is like cubes or rectangles. I've got a kind of triangular shape here, but that's of lesser importance. I've got holes in various different orientations. So you can sort of, it's not really something I can teach or explain, I don't think, but as you do modeling, you'll probably start to your brain will start to process or consume a shape in certain ways. So you see a shape and you can sort of mentally break it down into its fundamental core components. And those components are basically a square or rectangle, cylinder, and that's pretty much it. They're the sort of core. You might have a sphere for some objects, but they're our sort of core basic objects that almost everything that I'm going to show you is built from, or everything I do is pretty much built from those. There's a few other bits and pieces, but this is the main thing. Very simple, really, in essence. Just think of some basic shapes, and then the Boolean modifiers is a very powerful thing. So that's what I use a lot. It's definitely not the only way to do it, but it is the way I do it. And it might take a little bit longer to sort of create your shape or your design to start with, but it's absolutely pays you back thousandfold when you go to modify, update, enhance. It's a very iterative process, the designing, and I find everything I've designed I will revise and iterate tens, hundreds, thousands of times. You just lose count. It's a constant sort of evolution. So the way I do this non-destructive designing is that I'll have these core objects like a cube, cylinders, etc., that either add or minus from each other. So that's your Boolean operator. And a lot of what I'll show you to design this will be Boolean operators. Very powerful. So you can have like a Boolean operator which is additive, so they call it union. There's subtractive, and I've gone blank. I'll show you in a sec what that term is. And there's also intersect. So the intersect will give you, if you've got a cube and a cylinder, and they partially intersect each other, that only that area of that intersection is what you'll get if you choose an intersect Boolean. So 3 different core types of a Boolean. So I think that's a good, probably way too much, but a good sort of starting description. And it will probably make 0 sense to you if you haven't done this stuff before. And if it does make sense, then awesome. The idea is that I'm going to show you, and it'll gradually start to make sense. And this sort of process is very time consuming, especially initially, to just practice, try things, Google, watch videos like this to understand how to do all these steps and processes, and then it gradually becomes more and more familiar. Becomes second nature after a while, but definitely not up front, so don't worry. So I'm going to use Boolean operator. I'm going to use a mirror So pretty much everything that you do often has a left and a right, or it's symmetrical, or it's at least symmetrical to some extent. Might not be 100% symmetrical. This object is, by the look of it, yeah, 100% symmetrical. And the way we do that is using a mirror. So it's another Boolean, another modifier called mirror. So we've got Boolean modifier and we've got mirror modifiers. I think that's probably all I'll need to show you to how to make this object. And then there'll be mostly non-destructive with a little bit of destructive modeling of the objects. And that should get us from nothing, or a cube on the screen, to a shape that's going to represent and replicate this component. So what will I start with? I might actually start with some cylinders, so I'll delete that one. The number 7 on the keypad is a shortcut key that gives you the top view. So now I've got a top view, I can see my grid. I've got my 3D print menu here. I'll show you that later when we get to the output. That was one of our extensions we plugged in. And stretch this guide a bit. So I'm going to often start with the holes. So I'm going to probably measure the hole distances. So it's about 8 millimeters, so it's 4. And then the bigger hole is, what's that? It's about 16. Yeah, so I've got 8 and 16. Yeah, so I'm always going to just make half because we're going to mirror it. So if I press A, I'm going to press Shift A. I do a lot of this stuff automatically now, so I'll probably forget how to explain it, so bear with me. So Shift A gives you the add menu. I want to add a mesh, and you've got all these different objects. We'll just probably use cubes and cylinders today. We'll see how we go. So I'm going to start off with a cylinder. And I've definitely not got the scale set right, so bear with me. There we go. Configuration step I might have missed. Let's try that. So if I go Shift A, Mesh, Cylinder, I'm still getting a 2-meter cylinder. Bear with me for a sec. I will Google, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I haven't done this for many years now, so I had to do a little bit of Googling and play with it. So the idea is here is we have to set the settings I've already showed you, so I'll just pop through those quickly, and then create an object, set the scale and the size we want, save the default, and then come back in, close Blender, come back in, and then we get our default settings saved for all of your future instances from then on. So if I add a cylinder, so it's now 2000 millimeters, which is not what I want. So my unit scale is 0.001. So I'll put that back to what we talked about before, 0.001. My one-to-one scale of this object now, my 100% scale is 2 millimeters. And my scale up here in the viewport which will determine the guide. So see, I've got no grid lines. So now I want to change that to 0.001 as well. And then we get our grid lines. So if we go to top view, so 7 on the numpad was the shortcut to the top view again. And now I can see my 2mm cylinder, 2mm diameter cylinder. And we can see these big squares here as each one of these big ones is 1mm. And the small divisions, the small squares in this view, are 0.1 of a millimeter. So 1/10 of a millimeter. So now we want to sort of resave our default view. So I'm just going to delete that cylinder again. I'm going to go back to my defaults, save startup file and overwrite it again. And I think best practice then is close, save and close this file. So we can do Control S for save, close it. I won't close it now because I'll have to reconnect it. Let's do that. Why not? So I'll close it. So you can see it's gone now. I'm going to go to my folder where I have saved it and open it up again. And I will bring this back into our little view here. Cool. So now let's have a quick check. So up here in our viewport scale we have 001 still, and in our units we have 001 and the length is millimeters. Now if I go Shift A, gives me the add menu, mesh, cylinder. So now we can see that I've got my dimension, 2 millimeters in all dimensions, and that scale for me is now 1. So my 100% size of my default starting position of a little object that I've added is 2 mil. So that's good. So that gets us in the ballpark of the types of objects that we want to be creating. Okay, so a little bit of navigation again. So remember, hold down the scroll wheel and move the mouse, and you can move around the 3D space. You can move around the object. If I want to move its position, I hold down Shift and press the scroll wheel down. So click the scroll wheel and hold it down and move the mouse. So that moves it in this way. So you can move the object around the view to get it where you desire it. Okay, let go now. And then back, hold down the mouse scroll wheel. I can move around the object itself. Let go of that. If I just scroll the scroll wheel in and out, I can zoom. So just a quick navigation recap. So that brings us to the end of part 1 of this video series. And what we've done is to give an introduction to Blender, obviously download and install it, and then gone through some of the environment setup and configurations that I've done to my environment, to my liking. So it gives you a bit of a feel of how I go about setting the environment for the purpose of designing for 3D printing. So we'll wrap this first part up now, and please join me again for part 2.